Welcome aboard the character arc. My name's Victor, and I hope we enjoy this voyage together. This video contains spoilers for Avatar: The Last Airbender and Season 2 of The Legend of Korra. With that out of the way, let's start the video. Going on the internet and saying that Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of the best cartoons on Nick and one of the best television shows in history is not a difficult or challenging task. While this opinion can never be seen as a hot take in the past to those who watched the show while it aired in the 2000s, the recent resurgence of the franchise, as a result of its release on Netflix last May, has made this an easy opinion to have. And there are many reasons why. The show has amazing writing, amazing art, amazing animation, amazing characters, a deceptively simple premise that gets expanded into an entire living, breathing world, and a real sense that the creators of this show put everything they could into making a heartfelt story that could appeal to children and adults simultaneously. But what makes Avatar so special? How can a person describe what makes the show so appealing and easy to love? Avatar isn't the only show that succeeds at many or even all of these fronts. However, it is one of the few shows that can blend all of these different strengths into many different combinations that strengthen the quality of the entire work. For example, while other fantasy or adventure series will have magic or power systems with a lot of depth behind it, Avatar uses its art and animation to do a lot of the narrative heavy lifting of explaining the depth of its magic system, thus combining its amazing animation and amazing writing into yet another unique part of its story. This blending of different parts of different aspects of the show is what makes Avatar's storytelling so special. And the best example of this masterful blending of the storytelling elements can be found in Season 2, Episode 9, Bitter Work. Season 2 is sort of the darling season of Avatar. For many, it's the season that truly transcends Avatar from that of an above-average kids show to a story that can thoroughly be enjoyed for its character depth and world progression. Bitter Work is an excellent example of an episode that blends world building and character development to demonstrate the positions of certain characters within their arcs. Before we focus on Bitter Work, let's talk about some of the strengths of the entire series in terms of world building. World building is successful when the crafters of the universe that the narrative takes place in make the setting feel believable, no matter how fantastical or advanced the setting may be. In the real world, there are different versions of transportation in different areas, depending on the landscape of the setting and the technological or even magical capabilities of an area's inhabitants. If it makes sense, it's good world building. In the real world, different people have different cultures, and with that comes different values and ideas that they either revere or disregard. Whether they are based on religious beliefs, natural surroundings, or even history, groups of people believe in different things and have different reasons to believe in them. This cannot be more true in Avatar, which has the added bonus of expressing the differences in the four nations' culture through what the series may be most known for: bending. The visual depictions of the movements unique to the different bending martial arts are not only rooted into real-life martial arts, but serve as visual descriptions that separate the differing philosophies between the four bending disciplines that the writers wish to emphasize. Although the differences between the bending disciplines are spelled out in the script through dialogue occasionally, a lot of it is seen visually. Aang dodges and weaves because airbending focuses on evasion and non-aggression, while Toph holds her ground because earthbending is about stability and being unmovable. All other episodes show this philosophy through physical action, but Bitter Work really emphasizes how the bending martial arts are an extension of the group's cultures, philosophies, and ways of life through the wisdom of Uncle Iroh. At the same time, Toph's earthbending lessons are our first real insight into the bending and philosophy of earthbenders, who up to this point were never even really main characters in the narrative, like Aang, Katara, Sokka, or Zuko. Together with Toph's insight into the sturdy and immovable nature of earthbenders, and Iroh's experience and wisdom that allows him to, in only a few minutes, accurately depict the air nomad's spiritual freedom, the water tribe's ability to adapt to change through culture and community, the Earth Kingdom's physical and emotional resilience, and the Fire Nation's drive, we are given a lens to view all the many examples we have seen of this information, and paints a broad and yet detailed picture of how varied and fleshed out the world of Avatar is. The episode emphasizes that we learn about the world's cultures through their bending styles. When Iroh says that the air nomads detached themselves from worldly concerns and found peace and freedom, our understanding of airbending and the air nomads is enhanced. Seeing the jokes of Monkey Atso and the carefree nature of Aang and the other airbending children during Aang's flashbacks allow us to draw an even greater connection to airbending's quick, agile, and non-weight-bearing movements, Aang's character, and the characterization of what his entire people stood for: freedom. We have seen airbending to be the element of freedom, but with Iroh's explanation, we now can draw wider connections to the element, the bending discipline, and the cultural identity that covers the people that bend that element. When Iroh states that the people of the Water Tribe are capable of adapting to many things, and that they have a deep sense of community and love that holds them together through anything, we as an audience can draw connections to how important family has been amongst Water Tribe members, like the strong connection between Katara and Sokka, or the bond between Sokka and his father, and how Sokka's drive to become a warrior stems from his desire to live up to the cultural expectations of what a man should be in the Water Tribe community, just as much as it is related to his need to impress his dad. We are drawn to remember the Northern Water Tribe, their connection to spirits, which is even reinforced in Korra, and their strict cultural traditions that, although controversial, like the ban on female waterbending for fighting, are accepted if it means they can adapt to the cold climate they live in. We remember that the revering of the moon and ocean spirits are especially relevant to a waterbender because their element is the only one directly tied to an actual spirit. And we remember that water is one of the most adaptable elements, being able to be used in clouds, sweat, and blood. The flowy, push and pull nature of water bending gets linked to the Water Tribe's cultural identity when Iroh makes his comments on the adaptability and strong community that defines the Water Tribe, which we have already seen. When Iroh states that the people of the Fire Nation have desire and will, and the energy and drive to achieve what they want, we can draw connections between the disciplined, forceful, and aggressive movements of firebending that we've been exposed to, and the demeanor and drive of many of the Fire Nation characters we see. Azula, who possesses the precision and focus necessary to be a firebending prodigy and topple nations at the age of 14, and Zuko, with his relentlessness to achieve his goals, which as viewers know, can be expressed in negative and positive ways. In fact, the Fire Nation's drive for power, although misplaced as we see in the Firebending Masters episode, is the cause of the conflict that starts the entire series. Since Sozin started the war in order to give the rest of the world the technological advances that the Fire Nation was enjoying, although this was also an excuse to revel in his lust for power. Iroh's comments about the people of the Earth Kingdom being diverse, strong, persistent, and enduring are supported by what we see of the Earth Kingdom fighting style and Earth Kingdom locations that have endured war with the powerful Fire Nation for almost a century. It's supported by the longevity of King Bumi and his kingdom of Omashu, and is reinforced in the future by Toph's earthbending lessons this episode, which emphasize stability and standing your ground. Bitter Work adds an additional layer to Avatar's world building by taking the physical movements of the series' magic system and connecting it to the cultures and characteristics of the people who practice these disciplines, thus putting past and future exposure of these cultures into a more unified context. Aside from world building, Bitter Work as an episode sort of acts as an inflection point in the story, because it gives viewers the current status and the potential direction for the series' two central characters, Aang and Zuko. Bitter Work follows The Chase, an episode that saw the reunion of Zuko and Iroh as well as the reformation of Team Avatar after Toph's short exit from the group. The group dynamics of Team Avatar and Team Zuko have more or less been returned to normal after a period of group fracture, but the goals of Aang and Zuko have become more pertinent, especially as a result of some recent events. Zuko initially left Iroh since he believed that he no longer needed his guidance. His time apart from Iroh reminded him not only of how bad his current situation as a banished refugee is, but also reminded him through flashbacks and through his fight in The Chase, how much of a past and current threat Azula actually is in his life. Seeing Iroh be almost killed at the hands of this massive threat simultaneously reminded him of how much he cared for his uncle, and how much he needs his uncle's counsel in order to eliminate this threat. The beginning of Bitter Work also sets up a scenario where Zuko has to take advice from Iroh, someone he has historically clashed with, in order to achieve his short-term goal of defeating Azula and making sure she's no longer a threat, at least until he can figure out what new steps he needs to take in his life. Zuko basically has to change to further his goals, and to do that he has to seek Iroh's counsel. Now that we talked about what's been going on in Team Zuko during this period between The Chase and Bitter Work, let's talk about Team Avatar. While in the previous episode Toph clashed with Katara, who was resistant to Toph's independent demeanor, Toph now clashes with Aang, a person who must deliberately change and adapt to Toph's completely opposite of way of thinking in order to achieve his goal of mastering the elements and becoming a fully realized avatar before the comet comes. Aang has to change to further his goals, and to do that he has to seek Toph's counsel. Bitterwork acts as another Aang-Zuko parallel episode, just like the Storm and the Avatar and the Fire Lord did, and gives both characters the space to attempt growth where it's needed. What is interesting though is how their success at growth differs, and how the mixing of character development with the new world building established in the very same episode plays a role in depicting the differences between where these two characters stand by the end of the episode. Plenty of episodes in Avatar focus on the development of our main characters in interesting ways, and plenty of episodes also enhance the world building of the series by showing how bending can be used in interesting ways. So the question is, why is Bitterwork one of the best examples of the series' storytelling? What makes Bitterwork one of the series' standout episodes is its ability to blend enhanced world building that it provides during its runtime with the potential for character development it sets up at the beginning of the episode. The episode shows how this world building is directly tied to Aang and Zuko's character arcs. It contextualizes this world building and makes it relevant to the development of the characters. We now know that Aang and Zuko must change, and the part of the story that stands in as a representation of Aang and Zuko's potential for change comes in the form of bending, more specifically earthbending and lightning generation. Aang's emotional character test comes from whether or not he can adapt a more confrontational, stern, and sturdy approach to the way he views things. And his success at achieving this is represented by his eventual success at earthbending, a stern and sturdy element. As we've seen throughout the show, Aang is a master at weaving in and out of situations and being quick on his feet, which is an extension not only of his personality, but of his natural element. And as previously explained in this episode by Iroh, is an extension of the entire life philosophy of his people. This explains why he was having so much difficulty grasping earthbending, while airbending and waterbending, elements more suited for his personality, were easier to learn for him. Aang continues to struggle with standing his ground when he refuses to confront Toph over stealing his staff, instead choosing to meditate and detach himself from his emotions. It isn't until Sokka's life is in danger that Aang steps up and stands his ground against the saber-toothed moose lion, and more importantly, Toph, allowing him to finally earthbend. Since the episode used Toph's earthbending lessons and Iroh's lectures on the elements to explain how earthbending is tied not only to solid strong movements, but a solid and strong sense of character, Aang's ability to earthbend by the end of the episode shows his growth as a character. This is in stark contrast to Zuko. The mechanisms behind lightning bending and lightning redirection exist to show how Zuko failed his emotional character development test. Being unable to separate the positive and negative energies of his firebending to generate lightning, as Iroh instructs him, literally represents his inability to separate the positive and negative forces that have acted in his life in order to actually make clear-headed decisions and live a life according to his values. Thus, he not only is unable to generate lightning, he blows himself up repeatedly in the process. When given a second chance at learning a physical skill, lightning redirection, Zuko, unable to heed Uncle Iroh's warning that this needs to be used only when conflict arrives, and not during training due to the lethality of lightning, directly seeks conflict in the form of a lightning storm, proving that Zuko missed what Uncle Iroh was trying to teach him about lightning redirection, and why Iroh was able to learn it from waterbenders in the first place. That's similar to how waterbenders push, pull, redirect, and change water constantly as a fighting form and as a cultural philosophy. People must learn how to adapt to positive and negative situations, and not directly seek negative conflict in an effort to feel in control of what sometimes can't be controlled, whether it be a stray water blast or parental disapproval and rejection. Bitterwork's masterful blending of world building and character development becomes even more apparent when you realize that Iroh, the character responsible for bringing this world building into the forefront of the episode, is himself a product of the blending of the show's world building being used to portray character development. Iroh tries to show Zuko that the Avatar's ability to balance all four elements requires the ability to understand all four different points of view, but the different perspectives people of the four nations have can even be applied to people who aren't the Avatar. He can only say this because he himself has already gone through the process of understanding the other nations' philosophies. Iroh began his life as a Fire Nation citizen, and the general that invaded Ba Sing Se, likely influenced by his culture's increased importance on maintaining honor, having the drive to help the Fire Nation conquer the world. The loss of his son in the 100-Year War, a direct result of the ultimate expression of the Fire Nation's cultural values, is suggested to have made him reconsider how much those values on their own influence his actions and his outlook on life. And he comes to the conclusion that the ideas that define firebending and the Fire Nation while not negative, cannot exist in a vacuum. Iroh learns about the other nation's roots, and by doing that he learns about their bending styles, which as we see in this episode are intertwined. And thus he ends up being the most emotionally balanced character of the series, being able to invent lightning redirection by studying the push and pull style of waterbending and adapting it to firebending. In spite of his background as a Fire Nation general, his great wisdom comes from his ability to actually understand the points of views of different people and learn from them, even if they are different from the culture he was raised in. As Iroh says himself, true wisdom must come from all sources, or else it becomes rigid and stale. And in a world of hyperpolarization and separation, that can be truer. Blending world building and character development allows the world building to feel more integral to the story, because it directly affects the narrative of the characters that live in that world, while also making the characters feel more realistic because their emotions and actions are influenced by the design of the world they live in, just like people in real life. Bitterwork shows how important this blending is to a story, and how doing this can elevate storytelling is one of the many things Avatar: The Last Airbender does right.